first and foremost, before we jump in, I want to talk about the thing that happened over the weekend that probably caused you a little grief, right? So TikTok went down.
My kids were very upset, and surprisingly, like the young mother that posts all the young mother videos, she was like, "Oh, my friend here, my friend there," and she knew somebody in Japan, and they came together around issues that young mothers face, and they were upset.
Yeah. The reason that I mention it, right, is we don't control these platforms, right? So TikTok, obviously, there's a whole political side to it that I don't want to get into, but obviously TikTok, we've put some faith into it. We've built audiences on TikTok, and many of the companies that are listening to us have probably subscribers, and they're putting out content, and over the weekend they realized it's gone, right? And unfortunately, when we look at our social media profiles and things that we've built out there and our followers, whether they're 100 followers or a million followers, we don't own them. And the problem with that is that it can all disappear tomorrow. So if you go out there and you build, let's say you're a celebrity and you build a 10 million following, something can happen tomorrow where that can just disappear. So I wanted to take this time today before we jump into our main topic and just say that realize that whatever you've built on a social platform can disappear overnight. It could be the platform itself, or it could be somebody could hack your account and take you out of it, right? And we were talking earlier how I had a real estate client that literally has now 3 different Facebook pages because they keep getting hacked, and they keep having to pull their followers back over. So ideally what we want to do with that is try to figure out a way to pull those followers off of the platform. And many times what we do is we provide something of value, some kind of free value, and we'll get that email address, right? So send them over to one of your landing pages on your website. Make them fill out a form of some sort online. But realize that we've got to get that information out of, as they call them, the walled gardens, because they control all that information, and that's on purpose. So you need to pull that information out. You need to get the email address, the contact information from your followers, so that you can continue if something happens like how TikTok went down over the weekend.
I'm looking right. We actually are on the campus on Lookout on Indianapolis Boulevard. Big road, and right across the street is El Fuerte, a little Mexican restaurant, and they have a pretty big Facebook, I think 7,000 followers. Mm-hmm. How would they go in, and why and how? Well, we just covered the why. How would they go in and get all 7,000 of those contacts?
Sure. So what they have to do is, we're talking about your socials on mute today, and let me kind of go there first, and then we'll come back. But many times when we don't get our followers engaged with our content, what happens in the algorithm is it starts to realize that you are not necessarily interested in the content that they have, right? So even though they have 7,000 people, ideally it would be great if all 7,000 were seeing every single post that they have out there, but it's not the case. So as you go through, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, if you're not engaging in some capacity, odds are over time they're going to stop serving up the content that you're putting out there. So a company like them, right, so that has 7,000 followers, needs to focus on the engagement side, not just putting content out for content's sake, but how do we put content that is literally a back and forth activity? Right, so we call it social media, and the basic definition of social is communication, and communication doesn't go one way. Communication goes back and forth, but many people treat social as a one-way, communication, which is really just advertising, right? Not allowing people to comment back. From a social standpoint, we need the engagement. Otherwise, what happens in your feed is it completely disappears. So I have multiple people that I follow, right? Whether it's on my own personal, whether it's on my businesses, but there are people I went to high school with that I follow on Facebook and Instagram, and I have not seen content from them since high school, right? Like, and that's a joke because I've been out of high school longer than they've been around, but um, I don't see any of that out there, right? So, it's that's a very difficult thing. So if let's say they have 7,000 people that they're targeting, some kind of engagement has to happen there, right? So are they doing an event? Are they doing? Is there something that they can give out to the general public? Is there a new? Let's say there's a new entree or a new dessert that they're offering. Maybe they can offer it up to their followers, and they have to bring in a code that or comment or something along those lines online. That's how we start to get that engagement and how people start to then see the content more often.
So you have the marketing manager of a small company, which this is mastering local marketing, or the owner or whatever. They have to look at, oh, here's my Facebook page, and I'm paying my son-in-law $700 a month to look at it. And look, I've got like 7,000 followers. That's pretty good. It was 3, now it's 7.
Right.
But they're not asking the right question, are they?
No, they are not. No. So I see this all the time, right? Or there are companies out there that say, "Hey, we will get you followers." That's great, right? Let's say you have 1,000 followers. You have 10,000 followers. Let's use simple numbers here. So I found a report from Social Insider that kind of breaks it down a little bit more. And these numbers, we were talking about them earlier, kind of shocked you. They don't shock me because I'm in the space and I really understand this is the problem. But if you have 1,000 followers, if you're on TikTok and you have 1,000 followers, 27 out of those 1,000 people will actually engage in your content, right? They'll like it, they'll comment, whatever, share it, whatever, right? Sounds okay. That's great. 27 out of 1,000 doesn't sound that much. It gets worse, right? So on Instagram, 7 out of 1,000 would actually engage, and it gets even worse on Facebook. We're talking about 2 out of 1,000. So think about that. You have 1,000 people that are following you, and the typical kind of numbers that we're seeing are that low. Now, a good engagement rate, and this has been quoted by many out there in the field, is roughly around 2 to 3%. So if you have 100 people, we're talking 2-3 people, that's a good engagement. So go back and look at the last post that you put out there and see how many people actually liked, commented, shared, and start to divide that into how many followers you have, and you'll kind of really start to understand what your engagement rate is and whether or not your followers are seeing you. Because if that number is extremely low, there's a reason for it. People just aren't seeing it.
So technically, you could have 3,000 followers, and if you're getting a 50% engagement rate, which is almost unheard
Of course.
because then you would eventually get more followers, and then they would fall off. But say you had a really high engagement rate, but a somewhat lower number, that's preferable to 7,000 with a 2 out of 1,000 engagement rate. Is that fair to say?
Right. I mean, so in kind of the area that we're at, we can find 50,000 people pretty easily because we're in a densely populated area. If I told you that your customer list was 50,000 people, but only 5 of them showed up to your open house, that's not good. But if I told you that you mailed out 100 postcards and 98 of them came to your open house, that's great. I would rather have that because it's going to cost me a whole lot less money to target those individuals, and you have a much better relationship with them. So that's really what we're talking about. Is it's not necessarily about gaining 50 million followers. It's really about finding the audience that finds you engaging and wants to have that social connection with you.
Once again, Matt Hansen is the clinical professor over here at PNW, and as I make fun of on my shows, is the digital marketing guru. But he didn't always start that way. He's always referencing mailers, which are still popular. And they're in the 2 to 3% response rate too. So really, if you think about it, the Facebook post engagement is similar to like a mailer rates.
Yeah, it is. And I reference that a lot. I mean, I had a conversation last night with a client where they were going to send out 10,000 pieces to kind of generate awareness of their area. And, my first job coming out of school, I remember going day one and somebody handed me the job and basically said, okay, good luck. We have an 850,000 piece direct mailer that has to go out in 2 weeks. Go. And nothing has changed, right? Like whether it's a direct mail piece or it's social media, we're still talking about engagement rates and whether or not people are going to respond. So while the technology changes over the years, the ideas are still the same. We're looking for people that are going to respond. Don't get on social and think, oh, I'm just going to post and post and post and post, and now I'm going to have 700 posts and 3 followers. At that point, you're doing something drastically wrong, right? You're not engaging, right? You have to go out there and be a human being, even though you're a brand. You have to show that social interaction. But yeah, that's why I laugh, because I do mention direct mail a lot. I have a lot of clients that still do direct mail, and it's funny how it shifted from it worked in the past, then it didn't work, and now it's working again. So yeah, it's funny how the trends just kind of shift.
You know, you've mentioned engagement a bunch of times. You're gonna have to, there's a lot of people that are not deep into local digital marketing. How would you define engagement?
Engagement is anything that, let's say we post something, right? Do you have any likes on it? Do you have any comments on it? Do you have any shares on it? Are people watching a video that you put out there, right? So it's something, as they're scrolling. Do you ever notice that as you're scrolling through and you stop and you look at something for a set period of time, and then you continue scrolling, later on that thing that you stopped on will start to come back over and over. So what it really does realize that you are engaging with certain content and then starts to populate it, right? So there are thousands of different posts that can be put out there for you to see when you're on social. And it was funny, I actually pulled some of the information from Instagram, and it was basically saying how they determine what shows up in your feed. And every single thing they're outlining, and I'll read just a couple of them here. It says how likely you are to click to comment on a post. Engagement, right? How likely are you to click a reel to view it in full screen? Engagement, right? How likely are you to skip over the first post in the feed? So what they're saying is you've skipped right past it, so you didn't stop and engage with it. So what we're saying is everything is about engagement in these algorithms, and I don't want to get into the technical side of it, but I do want to tell you that you have to think about engagement every single time you post something. Otherwise, it completely disappears from your feed. And that is not where you want to be.
So you mentioned a couple times, ask a question. Give us an example.
Sure. So, I like to kind of write down some of the examples and bring them to you. So let's say you have a bar, right? If you could only have one type of alcoholic drink the rest of your life, what would it be? And I was joking because we're right outside Chicago. I would definitely put in there, please tell me it's not Malort, which if you're from Chicago, it's the
pencil shavings and disgusting
right.
Phlegm. But it's been described. So I saw a thing on the news, and they were talking about it, and people were describing it, and I don't ever want to taste it. I've got a sense of adventure. I'm not averse to risk, but I will never taste that.
Well, it's funny. There's a ton of content of people trying Malort for the first time out there on TikTok and Instagram. So that's become kind of a thing. But if you're a local bar, ask the question, like, what is your favorite type of drink? If you could only drink one type of thing from here on out, what would it be? And you'll start to get those comments. And people will share, and people will comment on, if somebody writes Malort, you may get a whole nother string going on off of that says, I can't believe you like that, right? Some people love it, some people hate it, right? But
what's your answer to that, by the way?
My answer to Malort or my favorite drink?
Your favorite drink.
My favorite, I'm a beer guy, right? So growing up, my family, it was beer, and a lot of my buddies, through the years, I've had some of my best friends have been microbrewers, so the actual brewmasters. So learning how to make all of that, and we do a lot of that on through our friend groups, and then one of the other professors on campus, he makes his own beer as well. So that's really kind of where I'm at. So it's not, I don't have like a specific drink, but yeah.
So I'm glad it's not Malort.
No,
because that is just kind of taking over the talk scene when you go to. I was just in Chicago over the weekend, and the guy was talking about it next to us. I'm like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, all right, so that's asking a question. What about a poll or a survey?
Yeah. So one of my favorite ones that I see online all the time is, what is the worst car when it comes to auto repair, right? So it could be a car repair shop, right? And the one that I see all the time, they actually go out and they pull their own auto techs, but throw it out there, right? So everyone has a car make that they don't necessarily ever want to buy again, and I'm not going to share, those cars here, but we've all had bad experiences.
We all have a different one.
We all have a different one, right?
If we sat around, there's like 6, 7 people walking around outside the windows here, and you ask them, and they're all going to say a different one.
Right.
But that's an engagement that could be on your feed.
Right. So, you could literally just have a conversation. What was the worst experience with a car brand that you've ever had? Just throw those questions out there, because people love to kind of share that, and then that gets the engagement going. They're starting to comment, and then obviously you show up more often.
If you guys don't know the relationship, Matt was my professor when I got my MBA, rather long in the tooth, but I did get one. And I just remember like doing all those email programs and sending them out, and it was all A, B, A, B, A, B.
Yep.
What about, does A work or does B work? And it kind of stuck with me, and now I'm like, whenever we're doing something, I'm like, all right, you try half of them that way, you try half of them that way, and let's see which one's better.
Right.
But you can do that with basically what they call a this or that post. And explain what that would be.
Yeah, this or that. I mean, when we talk about A/B, and we've got to simplify this, right? So what he's referencing is, there are two types of content that we want to push out, and maybe thinking of it in the most simple way. From a website, people will test the color of a button, right? So red versus green, nothing else changes, those types of things. From a local marketing standpoint, maybe you're putting an ad out there, and maybe you've got one with certain color and one with a different color, and you're testing those types of things. That is a simple A/B test, and many local marketing companies may not get to that degree, but what we're trying to say is, from a social media standpoint, it makes sense to test content, right? So look at your engagement numbers and really understand what works, and understand that that's your customer base telling you what they want to see. And I was listening yesterday to somebody talk, and they said we do two types of content. We do the content that our customers want to see and they engage with constantly, and then we do the hard-hitting facts that they need to hear sprinkled in. And I thought that was really interesting, because it was we look at social as an entertainment platform, and what they were doing is they were consulting businesses on certain types of things, but the idea is the engagement is coming from kind of the, I don't want to call it hokey kind of things that they were doing, but on the flip side, they're saying we're trying to be real with these companies as well, and that's not necessarily the content that they engage with, but we're embedding it within the platform in our messaging, because they're already engaging and seeing that content.
So you're okay with a little lower engagement
Sure.
on those kind of things.
Sure.
What about UGC? How do you get that? And just define it too.
Yeah, so user-generated content is everybody wants that, and sometimes it's pretty hard to do, but one of my favorite things that I see online right now is people are posting out there, here's this picture. Can you change it? Can you use Photoshop? Can you do something to create something funny out of it, right? And I saw one of those, I think it was this morning as I was having my coffee, and somebody will post a picture and they'll say, here, change it. And the amount of comments with pictures that people will do, it's the funniest thing ever. I love seeing kind of those types of things. So I will literally click the comments to see what everyone has done, and now that's engagement, right? So I've now clicked on it, or you'll see people, they'll say click comment below to see all of these types of things. What they're really trying to do is get you to click on that so it has that engagement. But user-generated content, if you can use that in any capacity, It's great. It just means you have a really good relationship with your followers.
Quiz, you see a lot of those.
Oh yeah, quizzes are famous, right? So, do you prefer this? Do you prefer that? You know, basically, there's a million different ways that you can throw it out there. Just to ask a question, you can give options, or if you don't give the options, you just provide that in the comments. What would be your answer, right?
So you can do it open-ended, or you can do A, B, C, D.
You can do pretty much whatever you want,
Yeah.
right? So everything that you're trying to do is literally get them to comment, get them to share, get them to like it. And by focusing on that gets your engagement up.
Question and answer sessions. We do 36 different shows here of people in the community. And over time, I can tell at the beginning who's going to get a phone call or two and who is not. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, it's kind of an expert in a specific niche. Yeah. Like one of the shows we do is hospice and on death. And what do you do? How do you hire somebody to come into your house when relatives close to death? Right. You'd be surprised how many people will call in and ask about those little specifics. Mm-hmm. But you can make that happen on your social media feed also. How would you do it?
Right. So people are looking for advice. They have questions, right? You search the internet for all types of questions. Go to Google and type up a question, and then it serves up 5 or 6 additional questions that may actually go along with what you're asking. People want advice. So if you could put out there, today we're asking this question, or we're answering questions. Post your question in the comment section below. We'll get back to you and provide some insight. It doesn't have to be high level, right? So if let's say you're a landscaping company, it's 20 degrees outside. It's been 2 degrees the last couple days. When do I start planting? We put in some sod last year, and I'm calling around landscape
Always
company.
do it in the fall.
I had no idea. I'm calling around. It's 40, 50 degrees, and they're like, we don't have sod yet. I don't know these things, right? So I'm asking all these questions to the person that I'm calling on the phone. But if there was somebody that I had followed, and I follow a few different landscaping companies just because they're really elaborate in what they do, if I could ask those questions and say, give me some insights as to, when I can get sod, when's the best time, what's the nutrients that need to go on there, all these different types of things, I would understand it a whole lot better. And just by opening up the chains of communication, you can ask the question, you get the engagement, you really get somebody coming back looking for the answers.
We are recording this going into the weekend of NFC and AFC conference championships, and then we'll go into the Super Bowl. Sports bar, what could they do with that?
Sports bars, they can have they can have fun with that, right? So think of it in terms of, again, we've got the Chiefs playing the Bills. And if you notice anything online right now, it basically says that the entire world is rooting for the Bills unless you live in Kansas City. Everybody always loves the winner. So when Kansas City won the first year, great. They win the second year, okay, great. But now nobody wants to see the three-peat unless you live in the city. So what it really comes down to is you can have these fun arguments and say, okay, who's going to win, Kansas City or Buffalo? And you will get sports fans that go absolutely crazy telling you why it needs to be Buffalo. It's, it's this and that and da-da-da, right? And then you also have Philadelphia versus Washington. And you've got a rookie quarterback going against a team that is just absolutely stacked with Saquon, which, if you know anything about football, Saquon, he's amazing. But there are people, they were arguing this morning as I'm driving in, I'm listening to the radio, and they're arguing that Saquon should be the MVP. Sports Bar could have a field day with that, right? Do a quiz. Who should be the MVP, right? We think it should be Saquon. Who should it be? And let your fans go to town on that.
We just happened to be sitting across through the window there from the biggest Chiefs fan in the Midwest sitting, and he happens to be our sports director.
Great.
So in Indiana, we have more Chiefs coverage than anybody outside of Kansas City. Hey, let's just circle around then to kind of summarize some of this stuff. So, you've got your social media feed and you want to do it or you want to hire somebody to do it and you want to have it work for your business. Mm-hmm. You want the engagement. You don't just want the followers. But say you do get some of that, you get some engagement, you get a decent amount of followers. Say you get 2 or maybe even 3 out of 1,000 engagements on Facebook. What's the ultimate goal?
The ultimate goal should be sales, right? So you are using social as a platform to help spread the awareness of your company. And once, we've covered this in past podcasts, awareness is key, and then we get to the consideration side. So people want to understand who you are, right? By now, if you're listening to podcast number 4 with us, you've kind of got an idea of who we are, what we talk about. Maybe some of them have said, that's not quite where I want to be. Maybe some have said, oh, keep it going, right? Like these are really good nuggets and I'm learning a lot. It's the same thing on social. We are generating the awareness and we're trying to take people to that consideration side to get them to come in, right? So if you're a sports bar, we're talking about it, but if if we've got your guy basically pushing Chiefs content all the time and somebody is an anti-Chiefs fan, odds are they're not necessarily going to come in and really enjoy the place, right? So it's an aura, an environment that we're creating, and it's really kind of that persona of our own brand that we are out there spreading. And if it resonates, people will come see us.
Remind people what you mentioned, the sales funnel.
Sales funnel, very simple. I like to keep things simple. Is just awareness is the high, and maybe I need to go back and just say what is a funnel, because we assume that everyone knows it, but there are people that might not necessarily know what we're talking about. The idea is there is this number of customers that are potentially out there for you, right? So think of that as the high level of a funnel. A funnel it starts out big on the top and it gets smaller on the bottom. So the idea is that there are all these customers that are out there, and then out of those customers, we get a little bit smaller when we talk about the awareness. So those that are actually aware of us out of all of those potential customers. And then we go from the awareness number to those that are aware that will actually consider coming to shop with us or buy with us. And then on the bottom of it is the conversion side, right? So it's the purchases. So of those that would consider us, it gets even smaller, those that will actually come buy from us. So when we talk about a funnel, it's that process going from all of the people that are out there that could potentially be our customers to those that are aware of us, going down one level, to consideration the next level down. And then finally at the bottom, what we're talking about is people that actually come and buy from us.
I keep bringing up the funnel because all you got to do is Google it, and you got Salesforce, I think, has an 8-step funnel, and Indeed is like 12. Matt Hansen here on little old Purdue Northwest, although it's not that little, it comes up with a 3-step funnel. The very first time I heard it, it changed our way of looking at marketing and sales. Wow, that's the simplest way I've ever thought about it. Put everything into those 3 categories: awareness, consideration, conversion.
Yep.
Now, just to finish this up, your social media is on mute. You're not really in the awareness part of the funnel then.
I mean, they know about you, but you've disappeared. They're not seeing your messaging that often, right?
So it's hard to get them to consideration at that point.
Right. I mean, they may have considered you, which is why they followed you, but we do social in an effort to continually provide value back to our customer base. And if you disappear from social, that's one less touch point that they're going to have with your brand.
Final comments.
The only thing I would say is just, again, focus on engagement. Make sure that every single time you post something, you're going, all right, how am I trying to get them to engage? Am I trying to get them to like, comment, share, whatever it may be, play a video? How are we getting them to do any of that? But, that is key. So go back. If you're a small business listening, go back and look at the number of followers you have, and then look at the last 10 posts you have and see how many people have actually engaged with you, and then take that number into how many followers, and you'll be amazed at how small it is, unless you're doing a really good job. So hopefully you're doing a really good job, but I see more often than not, a lot of people just don't have any engagement whatsoever, and I keep telling them we're kind of wasting our time. So
Thanks to Adriana Alvarez, who has class at 11. So we're coming up against that. And thanks to you, Matt Hansen. I feel like I'm part of your podcast, but I also feel like I'm back in class listening to you talk. And this is outstanding.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you're getting some value out of it. But yeah, I mean, we'll continue to provide these really interesting snippets of information as we go through this. And, please subscribe. As you said, we're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And you can also find us on YouTube at Mastering Local Marketing. And we're also on Instagram. So check us out. We're just building that feed. You'll find some things on there and kind of little snippets that we pull some things out of the podcast, and you can actually go to YouTube and watch the podcast. So if you want to see us in person and really kind of get to know us a little bit better, head on over there.